Hello. So this is going to be a book review about The Behaviour of Moths by Poppy Adams. So I picked up this book from the library maybe 3 weeks ago. I kind of have to read at a certain pace because I have all sorts of stuff going on. But it kind of spoke to me. I was laying down origami messages like I do in the library. And it just kind of jumped out from the bookshelf at me. It was called The Behaviour of Moths, and the cover was kind of just covered in these moth silhouettes, and it was very interesting. And so I said, okay, I wonder what this book is about. So I opened it, and it was talking about how everyone's life has changed since one of the daughters fell off of a tower and as a kid and almost died, and how one sister stayed in this mansion and became this obsessive moth expert, and how after 47 years they meet again and discuss all the events that unfolded in their life and stuff. So I was like, okay, it sounds not necessarily my type of book. I'm more into the type of thrillers and psychology and classic literature and, turns and stuff. And I was like, this might just be a happy tale of stuff. But I just finished the Hannibal Lecter series, and I was like, okay, I need something a little bit light. Which is not what I got at all. As a matter of fact, it was a little bit surprising and twist ending. So, basically, The Behaviour of Moths sets up in England, and it centers around Ginny, or Ginny Stone, and her sister Vivian. Ginny and Vivian are basically complete opposites. Ginny's the older one. She's very quiet. She's very meticulous, almost type OCD. She's very emotionless. She dissects human life like a scientist does, like a Lepidopterist does. Lepidopterist. Sorry, I always say Lepido, but it's Lepidopterist. Does, and so she kind of sees humans as she sees moths, as basically robots that act upon chemical reactions, and so she has a very scientific mind, and emotions and all sorts of stuff don't really come into play. Vivian is the complete opposite, who's a normal girl who wants to go out to the city, doesn't want to become this moth expert, doesn't want to keep up the family reputation of being, a famous entomologist. And so, yeah. As kids, they were playing around in this giant mansion because they're a rich family who lives in this giant castle type thing, and one thing leads to another, and Vivian, the normal one, slips and falls and lands on a spike. And the spike basically spreads an infection, and they have to basically, give her an entire hysterectomy, and she can never have kids. And so, because she can never have kids, she's not really, I guess, full, and she really wants kids later when she grows up. And it's kind of this whole thing of, Ginny, will you have my kid for me? And getting away from the thing. But there's a lot of issues about mental illness in this book, particularly dementia, particularly alcoholism, and I guess forms of Asperger's or autism. It's alluded to that there might be something wrong with Ginny, or there might be something wrong with Vivian. And so it's kind of the battle from the perspective of Ginny, the scientist sister, as she grows up and decides to take on the family business of becoming a famous lepidopterist and studying moths with her father, who is also very scientific and emotionless, and their crazy mother, who kind of slips into alcoholism, and all sorts of abuse and stuff ensues. And the whole entire family is just trying to basically keep together and stay close as a family, but everyone has their own different ways of doing it, because scientists versus emotion, logic versus emotion, and it becomes this kind of struggle, and they fight with each other. And it's a very interesting book. A little bit of slow in parts, but at the same time, it's very real. You can kind of get into the scenario, and you can kind of see how it's happening. At the same time, you're reading from the view of the scientific person who's everything's logic, there's no emotion. And, as readers, we're bound to basically say, well, no, why don't you think of it like this, like a normal person does? So it's interesting to kind of read it from her point of view, and you kind of wonder, if you're missing anything, because you're seeing it from her mind, and she doesn't necessarily see the little nuances and idiosyncrasies of human emotion. And so I feel like it's interesting. You're given the entire story, but from one perspective, which is very limiting, but at the same time, it allows you to wonder about what else has happened. It's a good read. I'd recommend it. 6.5, 7 out of 10. I picked it up simply because I'm obsessed with moths, and I thought it would have to do a lot with moths. It had some to do with moths, but it's mostly just kind of a psychological family struggle, which is interesting in itself, and there's a twist ending, which makes you go, ooh, ah. So yeah, no, it actually wasn't as light and cheerful as I thought I was going to get after I was done reading the Hannibal Lecter series, but it was pretty good. Poppy Adams basically works for BBC, and so she does a lot of the nature videography and stuff, and so she has the knowledge about entomology, and I have to admit, I was like, oh yeah, I know this stuff when I was reading about the moths and the killing jars and which poisons and stuff to use, and so that was interesting, that was fun, and I was able to get that little bit of taste that I wanted of moths from her. So yeah, that was good. Overall, good book. Twist ending, makes you wonder. Yeah. Pretty good. It's a lot of psychological issues that, we think about, but just a different perspective. I mean, it wasn't anything that really challenged my worldview, but at the same time, it was just good to see something from that perspective, and it was a good read. So, yeah, 6.5, 7 out of 10. Pretty good book. Yeah. Yeah. So that was what I read. So I've been, I guess, reading a lot of psychological things, and it's only going to get more and more as I read Lolita, and then I'm going to read with Maria. Hi, Maria. I love you, Maria. We're going to read Possession by Dostoevsky. So yeah. I'm horrible at pronouncing names. Horrible. I always say Dostoevsky, but I'm sure I'm mispronouncing his Russian name. He did The Idiot and Notes from the Underground and Demon and The Double. I think I believe it's saying Dostoevsky. And then I'm reading by Vladimir Nabokov, Lolita. I'll have to check that later. So yeah, so a lot of Russian literature, but I think that's pretty cool. I like Russian literature. So might read some classics, some psychological stuff, but yeah, no, it's good. So The Behaviour of Moths, Poppy Adams, good read. I'd recommend it. It's kind of a slice of life thing, but it's an interesting psychological, dark slice of life. So yeah, yep. So that's The Behaviour of Moths. What else? Nothing else. So yeah, good read. I was pleasantly surprised with it. It's interesting reading it because the characters, they look past on their lives, but when you're reading it, they're about 70 years old, and so kind of having this 70-year-old woman as the main character is, I don't know, just a little bit different for me. Usually I'm used to, either young, strong female characters or, kind of suave, middle-aged dudes. So having a 70-year-old, kind of sister act as the main characters and the supporting characters of the story was quite interesting to kind of see the world from their perspective, because it really talks about the arthritis and the pain and the actual, kind of issues that I guess that, a 70-year-old woman would face, and, I can't relate to it, but at the same time it was very real, and, I could clearly see, the issues that were going on in their minds. So it's quite interesting. Yeah, good book. I'd read it.